The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position of ONTV's management, staff, or board of directors.
Detroit basketball.
Hello and welcome to Views from the Sideline. I'm your host, Joey Tysick. My partner, Malik Hill. We got a lot to talk about today. College basketball, our teams, came off of a hot streak and now they've come back down to earth just a little bit. So we'll talk about that. We got a little NFL update we're going to do. Talk about some of the stuff that's been happening around the NFL, some offseason moves that are going on, some possible trade rumors, things like that. And then light on the NBA news today. They're kind of going into their All-Star break, so there's not as many games, just getting ready for the All-Star game. And so we'll just talk about some rumors and stuff going into sort of the middle of the season stuff. But right away, Malik, how you doing?
I'm great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michigan got pounded yesterday by Illinois. Coming up.
But
got
we can
games
see because
against
you're
Michigan
in
State.
your Michigan garb today that you're still positive about the team. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I've during the Beeline era, I've seen like worse losses than that. I remember there were like 2 or 3 times where they got blown out by Penn State during the Penn State era. I mean, during the Beeline era, and they weren't very good at that time.
Yeah.
I've seen them take some bad losses and recover from it, so it doesn't faze me. I'm happy. Like I wanted Illinois to rub it in even more.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted Brad Underwood to keep his starters in. Like a team that doesn't face adversity usually doesn't make runs.
Right.
Nobody ever cruises to a Final Four or a championship. So even though it's kind of weird timing, I'm happy it happened now.
Yeah. So let's step back just a little bit. We'll keep talking about Michigan here before we get into Michigan State. But last week when we left, Michigan was preparing to play Iowa last Thursday. They went, played Iowa, got the job done. They basically
blew them out.
Yeah, they shut them out. They won 79-57. I mean, Luka Garza shot 6 of 19 from the field. He had 16 points. Really, really showed how good defensively that Hunter Dickinson is, that he's been able to stop a lot of these really good bigs. And Luka Garza is like one of the best in the country. So that was a big win for them. Then they went, played Indiana that Saturday, got things done. 73-57. They got the win, which was kind of expected. And then they're kind of somewhat last big game. Michigan State's going to be a big game because it's a rivalry game. But just as far as, Illinois is number 4 in the country. If Michigan would have knocked them off, that would have just made this one of the best seasons Michigan almost has ever had, to be honest. And they just fell so flat last night. Illinois ended up winning 76-53. And the stats basically, you just look at field goal percentage. Michigan shot 35% from the field, 17 of 49. And the thing that really, I don't know if it upsets me, but it's really confusing, I guess, because you start thinking back to the Beeline era teams. They shot 7 threes this whole game. They were 2 of 7 from 3, so that's 28%. Do you think part of it was not spacing the floor enough? If you're only getting 7 threes in a game, especially college and the way that the game has evolved, to only get 7 threes in an entire game, and now Illinois, they only shot 13, but to me it just seems like they needed to get up more shots, at least from the perimeter, space things out, make it easier for Hunter Dickinson to not get collapsed on. And I don't know, it just seemed weird. And I understand, the shots just weren't falling in general, but I don't know. I feel like they needed to space it out more.
I honestly think Illinois' defense deserves a lot of credit for that because in terms of the types of guards they had to match up against Mike Smith and Eli Brooks were almost perfect. Like the amount of quickness that Andre Curbelo and I'm forgetting the other guard's name, but he lit them up for most of the game. Left-handed dude. They're so quick and fast, and like they never got beat off the dribble. That's usually how Michigan gets their ball movement going.
Mhm.
Mike Smith or Eli Brooks will beat a guard off the dribble. They'll go into the lane, pass it out, and then ball movement will start. Mike Smith couldn't ever beat any of the guards off the dribble. Eli Brooks has never been known to be like a high level ball handler, but
Right.
even he usually like will pump fake and like get into the lane, get an open shot or pass it out. There were a few times where Eli Brooks got that. He hit one of the shots, I think, but yeah, Mike Smith, he had a really rough game.
Mhm.
He couldn't get past his defender most of the time. He could only get a few open shots really, and he could never get anything going. It started from there, and then from there, Franz had a hard time. Franz started going ISO, and Isaiah Livers started going ISO. And even though they can get baskets by themselves, that's not the core of what the offense is.
Right.
It started to like slow things down. And then because they couldn't create shots in those areas, they just kept forcing it to the post.
Mhm.
And Hunter Dickinson from the jump couldn't get it going. Even when he'd get past Kofi Coburn, the shots still weren't falling. It was just a rough night. It was weird because it was just it was all weird from the jump. It was all weird from the jump.
Yeah, and they basically got blown out like right from the get go too.
Well,
So
it was competitive for like the first 5 minutes because
yeah,
neither team could hit any shots.
right. But once Illinois kind of started going, they just kind of ran away with it.
Yeah, like Andre Curbelo was absolutely destroying them man to man, and then they went into his own, and he was still just too quick and too fast, whatever they threw at him.
Yeah,
Like he was just going straight to the rim. If he got contested, he'd hit somebody for an open shot, and if he wasn't contested, he'd just go straight up for a layup.
yeah. Uh, I'm not like, what's your concern level after this loss? That's what I want to know because I mean, I'll say my piece after, but I'm just curious at what you think this does for the team or hope it does for the team.
Since they haven't, they had a few rough patches early in the season. They went into overtime with Oakland. They played a few teams close, but yeah, once conference play started, it seemed like they got it wrapped up. They had that loss to Minnesota at Minnesota, and they were playing really well at that time. But yeah, I take it as an outlier for the most part because they've been on such a ridiculously impressive run that I still like. I've somewhat gotten used to it now, but it took me forever to get used to it because I don't see my teams play like at such a high level like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the fact that they're Hunter Dickinson, Franz Wagner, Isaiah Livers, they combined for like 4 of 28 or 4 of 29. I don't think that's gonna happen again.
Yeah.
Like Joanne, they're gonna go back to the drawing board. I'm pretty sure this is gonna wake them up because they're still one of the best teams in the country. They just had a horribly off night. They could never get into a rhythm, and that's just how it went.
Yeah.
Illinois punched them in the face, and Michigan couldn't recover.
Yeah.
And teams have nights like that.
Yeah, and that's what I hope Jawan kind of instills into them. Like, let's get back at it. We had a tough night, but we're still competitive. Um, my one concern that I have is that obviously Illinois was without their best player, Desean. He's kind of been out for a while with this facial injury. Did he break his nose or?
Honestly, I can't even
I
remember.
think it's something with like he broke his nose or something, and so he had to get surgery or something like that. So he's been out the last couple games. But Illinois has still looked pretty good without him. Um, so that's part of my concern is that Illinois was technically down their best player and they still blew him out, which again, that kind of goes into the fact that Michigan had such a bad game. But it also gives Illinois the same confidence, that we knocked off Michigan. So if they have to see each other again in the Big Ten tournament, I don't know if it's a concern of mine, but it's just something that's in the back of my mind that now both of these teams, Michigan has to think they have to get past the thought of like, we lost to them big time without their best player. And if they get him back for the Big Ten tournament, that's not going to matter. And then Illinois also has the confidence. So I'm just curious about that dynamic, how that will play out if it has to play out at some point.
Getting a win like that, if they meet again in the tournament, Illinois is going to be overconfident.
They might.
Winning that game without Io, they think they're
Yeah. Well, that's
they think they're top notch stuff right now.
But that could also propel them into being that good. So that's my only concern.
But when you say that, how often do you see teams with an ego like that really get it done? That never happens. No team that's smelling their own roses.
I'm trying to think.
And they're thinking like, oh yeah, we're great. And they just get it done. Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It was the last time you saw that happen, Joey.
Oh, my man.
That type of stuff doesn't happen.
What was his name?
A team has to
Why
have
can I not even think of his name?
A team has
now?
to have an edge to get to that level.
What was the dude that everybody hated?
They played with a great edge last night.
The dude that everybody hated in the tournament. This is years ago. Marshall
Henderson? Is that who you're talking about from Ole Miss?
Yes.
The dude that played out of
Yes.
that would scream and just like go nuts
that
every
was my
single
guy.
game.
I love that guy.
Screaming at the top of his lungs every
Yeah.
time he hit a three.
Uh-huh.
He was just crazy.
Yeah.
He was just crazy. That's different.
But sometimes his confidence would let him.
His
do
confidence, yeah, he was sticking his tongue out and just screaming at people.
Oh man, miss that guy. Anyway, but yeah, so that's like my slight concern. I still think Michigan is the best team in the Big Ten. I think they're destined to make a big tournament run. So I'm not overly concerned. I'm hoping that they can bounce back because basically at this point, this is like the last loss that they can have. Technically, they could lose to Michigan State and it'd be okay. But I feel like at this point, you wanna hammer home that you can beat Michigan State back to back. Just go into the Big Ten tournament with 2 wins over your rival, smooth sailing that you're back on track, and work your way back into the Big Ten tournament. Win that tournament, go into the NCAA tournament, and kill it.
Yeah, I'm expecting them to come into this next matchup against Michigan State with the type of intensity they had against Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be locked in and focused, and they're going to want to win this regular season title right now.
I do like that this probably sets them, because some people started talking about should Juwan sit his starters against Michigan State, which I think is stupid, but
okay,
like now it solidifies like, no, you can't do that because you just lost. You gotta make your mark again.
Also, no team does that.
No,
no team really does that.
No,
in college,
right?
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking too.
This isn't the NBA.
I had heard some like stuff on radio and other media that people were talking about it. I'm like, nah, especially as a rivalry game, you're not gonna do that. It's just weird. But yeah, I'm excited. These we got Michigan State tomorrow, Michigan State tomorrow on ESPN, and then on Sunday they're playing on CBS, playing again. So this is gonna be a good weekend to get 2 Michigan State games.
Speaking of Michigan State,
yeah, we'll segue into that now.
What are your feelings about them in the past week? Them playing on
they did
life
the
support
same thing
and the up and down wave.
They did the same thing that Michigan did. I'm gonna just bring up the stats real quick, but they,
watching that first half was kind of a struggle from both sides. Like it was a bottom tier Big Ten game.
Yeah,
honestly.
I mean, okay, so last Thursday it was the big deal that Michigan was playing Iowa and then Michigan State was playing Ohio State. Well, Michigan State got it done against Ohio State, which was a surprise. They looked good. It was a tough game, fun game to watch, actually. Very competitive. Aaron Henry kind of, been on a tear lately, carrying this team.
Yeah.
And they shut down E.J. Liddell, which is a big thing. I mean, he still got 18, but it was mostly from the free throw line. But Aaron Henry and, like, Joshua Langford had a terrible game, but he hit, 2 really, really important shots down the stretch. And those were his only 2 of the game. And they were really clutch. Basically saved Michigan State in that game. And then they go play on Sunday. They play Maryland.
Well, didn't they play Illinois after? Did they play Illinois first or Illinois after Ohio State?
They played Illinois before. So we talked about it last.
I was about to say, now that I'm thinking about it, that game woke Illinois up.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really talked about it at the time. They were just like, "Oh, big win for Michigan State." Illinois was terrible in that game.
I think that was their first game without Desean too.
No, Io DeSumo played in that one.
Did he?
Yeah.
Was that when he got hurt?
Like,
Are you sure?
okay, yeah, he played. I watched it. Yeah,
Oh yeah, he did. He just did really.
but
Yeah, he did really bad.
like Illinois played terribly in that game, almost like Michigan yesterday.
Yeah.
They didn't play well at all, but they still ended up losing by only like 10. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that game woke them up, and I think the loss yesterday wake Michigan up. But back to MSU
Yeah.
and the Maryland game.
So Michigan State, they played Maryland on Sunday, and Aaron Henry couldn't hit a shot for his life. Josh Langford also couldn't hit a shot for his life. They ended up losing 73-55, and it was very demoralizing after you beat Illinois and Ohio State. Then you're like, okay, we got Maryland, which should be. I mean, Maryland's not a cakewalk. They're still a good team. They're in the Big Ten, but you would have thought that they would have been able to run over them, and they just got pounced on, unfortunately. And then Michigan State played Indiana last night, the rematch against Indiana, which, again, kind of figured it'd be a close game. The previous game was close as well. And Michigan State still got it done, though. I believe, yeah, Aaron Henry had another crazy game. He had 22 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists.
Langford and Hauser stepped up a lot in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Hauser hit back-to-back hook shots. Langford hit a few threes. Gabe Brown hit some threes that extended it to like an 8-point lead too. That like they had certain moments where they got like back-to-back buckets from guys.
Yeah.
That kept them in control.
And I do have one gripe with Tom Izzo that I found in watching these recent games. Well, one big one that I'm just, you know how I get stuck on certain players, and I just don't like those players and whatever. AJ Hoggard, get off the court. I'm sorry,
Joey. We've talked about this. Listen,
I mean, they got rid of the Foster Lawyer thing, which is fine. And I'll be honest, and I'm gonna say it right here because Foster Lawyer is, former OAA Clarkston guy, so a lot of people around here like him. I never was the biggest fan.
I think most people around here don't like him anymore.
But I also feel bad for the kid because he's getting so much hate.
He gives his all.
He's getting so much hate right now,
hardest.
and I do feel bad for that.
Tom Izzo gave him a scholarship.
Unfortunately, that's part of, when you're playing college basketball, you're going to get all the hate in the world and all the praise in the world when need be. So I feel bad for him, but I'm glad he's not playing at the moment. Now, it seems like Izzo has moved over to AJ Hoggard for some reason.
Listen, man. When I feel like I don't want to go deep into this because then I'm going to get emotional. Once you strip the confidence away from another guy,
mm-hmm.
and you take him out whenever he makes a mistake, and you don't let him get into the rhythm he needs to get into, then you go with the other guy.
It reminds me of my high school career, and that's depressing. You want to get emotional? Let's not talk about it.
It's mind games. It's a certain type of way Izzo does his things,
mm-hmm.
and he's messed up this team because of that.
Yeah,
and now Hoggard is gonna be his guy for the most part.
And the problem is, so I get that like they're very thin at point guard because you got Foster Lawyer, you have your son Steven Izzo, like, come on, but and I get it, like you can't play Rocket Watts the whole game, but you also can't just play him 16 minutes. AJ Hoggard had 13 minutes, I think, in that game, which is way too much already. Rocket had 16. So, like, their whole point guard issue is a big problem. And at that part just scares me a lot. And every time that I see AJ Hoggard in, he makes some sort of mistake. And I know, like you're saying, too, you don't want to just take the opportunity away from a guy. But I feel like at this point, we've seen more from Rocket.
Listen.
And I'm so confused because he had been playing pretty good. I still think he's not playing to his full potential because he hasn't been given the reins or anything. But like in his limited time, he's done a decent enough job to at least warrant more time. And I don't know. I don't have as many biases about Rocket Watts than like you do, but at the same time,
at this point, it's beyond biases, isn't it?
Right, you can see it.
Everybody sees it.
Yeah,
it's beyond biases at this point.
Right.
He is not Tom Izzo's guy.
Yeah,
and it's honestly it's as simple as that at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Rocket is not his guy, and Tom Izzo is going to treat it as such. out in the open.
Yeah.
He's not his guy, and that's unfortunate. Obviously,
Yeah.
that Izzo would be that way, but
Right.
it's yeah.
And my thought too at this point is like he's kind of almost. I mean, I get it, relying on Josh Langford to kind of control the offense. I think that's okay. I think that's cool. He's the guy that's been around for 60 years on this team. Like let him do that. Let him basically almost run the point kind of play. And then if you're gonna try to throw in AJ Hogger, just throw in like Gabe Brown instead with those guys. I know Gabe, he gets a lot of minutes. He got 29 in this game against Indiana and stuff. But just run with those guys more and just don't even worry about playing like a traditional point guard at this point, I would say. Yeah, just run your forwards because those are like your best players. And then you just have a bunch of shooters out there, which is fine.
If he was open to changing his style of play, these things would have happened by now.
Yeah. Like Julius Marble in this game played 12 minutes. That's less than AJ Hoggard.
Listen,
Malik Hall played 12 minutes. That's less than
Don't
AJ
be surprised
Hoggard.
if they come out with some fire because they're playing Michigan tomorrow and Sunday.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if Izzo tries to thoroughly outcoach Juwan Howard because he's a second-year coach and he's going to try to prove a point that even though the season has been somewhat of a wash, I'm still the best coach in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
This all could happen. But yeah, what's happening this season? It's disappointing.
Yeah, I think their guard depth is just it's so terrible for them, and that's why I said they should just play. They should like Michigan State should almost play like a small ball type lineup.
It's as if he expected Rocket to be Cassius Winston.
Yeah, and he's a different style
and
player.
How much sense does that make, Joey?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Cassius Winston did way better at Michigan State than I ever thought he would, to be honest. But
he's one of the greatest point guards in that university's history.
But he's a different style of player.
Completely. And
you got to realize that, I guess. I don't know. And maybe I don't know much about basketball. Maybe my 28 years of living on this earth.
Don't you dare do that. Don't you dare. You stand on the things you see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be overconfident, but I feel like I've seen a thing or two.
Yeah, you stand on the things you understand, sir.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's rough, and now they have to win against Michigan to have a chance to get in, of course. And after Michigan losing to Illinois, I don't know if that's possible now. Like they have to beat Michigan once, make a run in the Big Ten tournament, which that part's possible.
They have so much to do.
Yeah.
I don't even – that part is possible, but is it probable? What is the probability?
Without a point guard, almost impossible.
To make that type of tourney run, you need more of a punch than Aaron Henry.
Yeah.
And we've seen at this point, that other punch that is there won't get the opportunity most likely.
Well, and that's why I'm saying if in all honesty that is what Izzo believes, just run with Langford and throw another forward in there like he's kind of been doing. But just basically take away AJ Hoggard's minutes. I don't care. I'll just say it. Just throw in like Langford and these shooters.
Hoggard should be playing like 7-8 minutes a game.
Yeah.
And that would make a lot more sense.
Just give some random breaks to guys. But give like Marble, Hall, give those guys more time because they're shooters. And then, I mean, Gabe Brown's been getting a lot of good minutes, good run. But just play the shooters. And you're sort of a small ball lineup. You don't have a great big man anyway. Sissoko's kind of...
He's too raw right now.
Yeah, he's not there yet. So I feel like they got to change up their whole style, which this late in the season is not going to happen. But like I said, if Izzo's going to commit to something, he's got to commit to something. We saw last week, we thought he committed back to Rocky Watts, and it seemed like it was working out.
It was working.
And then he goes away, and it's just confusing. Now, they still ended up getting the win, like I said, against Indiana, but then they got blown out the game before against Maryland. So, I don't know.
Marcus Bingham could be their best big man, but
I've been saying that for years.
Izzo wants him to be a traditional 5, which he is not.
No. But I've been saying that Bingham is right around the corner basically each year for the past 4 years. So
Izzo places players in the positions he wants them in.
Yeah.
And it's that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's partially why you didn't see Jaren Jackson exceed as much as we thought.
He had 3 or 4 teams that could have made championship runs.
Yeah.
In the past decade.
Yeah. Because you see immediately what Jaren Jackson did to the NBA or in the NBA that, you
Yep.
didn't really see at Michigan State. You knew it was there. Obviously, he was a high draft pick because of that.
He showed signs.
Yeah. But he's never unleashed, per se. So, yeah, it's a little frustrating the way that Michigan State's been going because they have the talent. Like you just said, they had a couple teams that, should have won more. I don't know. It's frustrating because, like I always say, I like when both teams are good. I like when both Michigan and Michigan State have good teams. And Michigan State's just been frustrating lately. I don't know. It's rough.
Let's just hope. I'm saying this as a Michigan fan. Let's just hope it doesn't end as ugly as D'Antonio's.
Yeah.
Which I'm thinking it won't because Izzo is the god of MSU.
Yeah. But it might have to.
And
be honest.
by the time he's done, he'll probably have a few more Big Ten championships because he's still a really good coach.
Yeah.
But let's just hope it doesn't end that way.
Well, like we said before, it's all gonna culminate if and when he gets Amani Bates. That will be the test year. That'll be the big test year to see what happens. But anyway, next week we'll get to talk about those Michigan State games, which I hope will be exciting to talk about.
Conference tournaments coming up. We're in the thick of it now.
Yeah.
It's almost that time.
Our boys from Loyola Chicago, they're having their conference tournament this weekend. We'll get to see if they can keep that run going and win their conference tournament, get a good seed in the NCAA tournament. Malik's boys at San Diego State still rising a little bit.
Even if they don't win their conference tournament, they still could get a 8-9 seed.
Yeah.
Because they're still that good of a team right now.
Yep. Duke is basically out of the tournament now because they lost to Georgia Tech. So unless they make some miracle run in the ACC tournament, maybe they have a chance, but they're pretty much out of it now.
So Duke and North Carolina play this weekend, and who do you think cares?
No one.
It's so wild.
Yeah.
That I saw them preview that matchup. It's usually like a long, minute-long commercial of old game clips and number 2 versus number 5. It was like a 30-second commercial that was like, let's show a few clips, Duke versus North Carolina.
Yep.
So crazy.
I like it because then ESPN's not talking about them. But, it's whatever. One other game we wanted to talk about was happened last night as well. Baylor, West Virginia. I didn't get to watch the whole game. I was kind of keeping track of it. Malik got to watch it a little closer, but it was a really good game.
Yeah.
Went into overtime. Baylor ended up sneaking out the victory, 94-89.
The crazy part is, Jared. I don't know how I forget names so quickly. I'll always do this.
Butler.
Yeah, Jared Butler.
Similar to your guy, Jimmy.
Jared Butler got fouled out in the first 30 seconds of overtime.
Yeah.
And they still just went on and won without him because they're veterans. They're so battle tested and not afraid of the moment that they just stepped up. Matthew Meyer, who I think could be a sneaky draft prospect when he comes out. He's 6'9". He's really athletic, and he's a knockdown shooter at times. He's streaky, but he has all the tools. They have so many pieces that are just willing to step up when they need to, and they got back on track last night with a huge win versus West Virginia.
Yeah.
I think they won their first regular season title since 1950.
Jeez.
Huge win for Baylor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And West Virginia has that same thing where they have a really balanced scoring attack.
Yeah.
What's his name? Taz.
Taz Sherman.
Taz Sherman came off the bench and scored 26. So that was a big game. So Baylor's probably going to jump back in front of Michigan most likely. And West Virginia had moved all the way up to number 6. So
they'll probably stay around.
Yeah, they're not going to really fall or anything, but they were kind of on an upswing at the time. Just looking at some of Baylor's starters, they have a Jared Butler, D. Mitchell, Donovan Mitchell. And then they have a Teague, Maceo Teague.
They have a player with one of the best names in college basketball.
You talking about Jonathan?
Yes, sir. Jonathan Chamu-Chachawa.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's a good one.
It took me a while to learn his name. I had to hear them say it because I looked at it and I was like, "Oh man."
Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan Chamu-Chachawa.
I like it. So yeah, those two teams gonna be tough to watch out or ones to watch out for as tournament comes around the bend. Other than that, the rankings somewhat the same. Arkansas actually flew up the standings. They're up to number 12 now. Houston rose up a little bit. They're now in the number 9 slot. And yeah, Purdue's back in the top 25, which is kind of cool. But Gonzaga, they're on their own. They're on their own tier at this point. So
They're too good for their conference,
yeah.
and also too good for most of college basketball.
Mhm.
So people really hate them right now
Yeah.
because they're really turning into like a new blue blood
Mm-hmm.
because they're that great.
Yeah.
But their conference just. I wish they were in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I feel like they do need to move conferences at some point. I mean, I guess they're still getting number 1 seeds every year. So
They'd still have just like 2 losses if they played in the Pac-12.
yeah,
But it would like reflect even more of how great they are.
right. So let's shift gears. Haven't talked about the NFL in a while.
Since when did we first come back? 3 weeks ago? Yeah.
Yeah, so we
Since
talked
the
about
Super Bowl recap.
Yeah, we talked about it briefly. I believe we talked about Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford deal a little bit. Real quick, I guess, before we go into the other stuff, let's just talk about the Lions real quick because there's a couple things that the Lions we'll be looking at. We'll do more of a draft preview when that comes too. But the thing I wanted to talk about for the Lions is what do you want them to do pertaining to like free agency and their franchise tag? Because there's a lot of talk right now about Kenny Golladay and what they're going to do with him. Do you want Kenny Golladay to be re-signed for possibly a good amount of money? Do you want them to franchise him? Or do you want them to like sign and trade him or franchise and trade him or something like that?
So
Or whatever they can do.
I have a question to those questions.
Okay.
Kenny Golladay came out of college. He was a 5-year guy or 4-year guy out of North Dakota State or South Dakota State, whichever one he came from.
I believe he was a
He was a 4-year guy.
Yeah.
Which means he was like 21, 22
Mhm.
when he came in.
Yep.
How long has he been in the league? 5 years? 4 years?
Yeah. He's right around my age, I know. So he's like 27 or something.
So he'll be 30 soon.
He's like 27, 28.
He'll be 30 soon.
Yeah.
He's just coming into like being a high-level receiver.
Mhm.
But how long do you think that ceiling will really last?
And that's kind of the big question is,
Exactly.
do you believe that his prime is right now
I
and that
think
you want to get the best out of him?
I think his prime is right now, but I think the Lions are also
Mhm.
in true rebuild mode for the first time.
Yep.
And I don't think they should waste Kenny Galladay's prime
Mhm.
now that he's fully coming into himself.
Yeah.
I think they should trade him for picks
Mhm.
or maybe for another young receiver from another team, but definitely some picks involved because he has a lot of value right now. A lot of teams that are either like trying to hit the next hump or teams that are like right there and need some punch, like the
Yeah.
Ravens and a few other teams,
The Dolphins.
the Dolphins. Some teams really are in need of a receiver like Kenny Golladay,
Yeah.
a guy that could be the number one and can make plays from the jump.
Mhm.
I want them to trade him, get some picks, maybe get one young guy out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be best for them to, don't waste his prime in the middle of a rebuild. The quarterback you have now isn't the future.
Yeah.
Hopefully they draft one. And if they draft one, it would be great having a go-to guy like him
Mhm.
from the jump. But if they're seriously rebuilding, I think you got to move away from him.
Yeah.
Because paying him a big contract now, I don't see what good that does 4 or 5 years from now.
Yeah. I agree. That's kind of where I'm at. Some people have pointed out that, there's a potential way that this Lions team could have a faster rebuild than most people expect. You know how the Dolphins really turned their franchise around kind of
Well,
surprisingly?
Off the 0-16 season, they were in the playoffs within 0-16 was 2007 or 8. Which one?
Probably
Was it 8?
8.
Yeah, I think they were 0-16 2008. They made the playoffs 3 years later.
Yeah.
So they've made a quick turnaround before, even though that was the bottom of the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they can really do that again. But I interrupted where you were going. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, all I was gonna say is that maybe they could have a turnaround similar to how the Dolphins did, where they missed the play, even just like recently. Like the Dolphins were kind of down, and then they accumulated these picks and stuff, and they made some good picks and some good free agency moves, and they were nearing the playoffs last year. They neared the playoffs this year. Like they're right on the cusp. Some people think that maybe if you keep Galladay around, the Lions could do something like that. But I'd rather not risk that at all and just, like we said, just kind of go full rebuild and take it slow because this team needs so many things.
Exactly. I don't see where people could think they're just like a few players away from. The Bears made the playoffs still because like they're well built except for the quarterback position.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing they need.
Yeah.
Green Bay still has Rodgers, and Minnesota, even though they fell off some, they have the best running back in the league.
Yeah.
Arguably, him or Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
You got the best rookie receiver in the NFL. You still got Adam Thielen. Kirk Cousins is still serviceable. They're a few pieces away from being on a level of a lot of other teams.
Yeah.
So they're still at the bottom of the division.
Yeah. Yep. Like that's why I said. That's why I kind of agree. And a lot of people have talked about franchising too, that they would much rather franchise a guy like Romeo Okwara, which I totally agree with.
Yeah.
He was like the best defensive player on the team this year. You want to keep him around because I also think you keep Romeo around, then you can keep Julian around. And I think Julian is still, he's got potential to do some damage for this team. The only problem, and we can fix that in draft or free agency or whatever, that people have brought up is that the Lions are going to lose Kenny Golladay potentially, Marvin Jones potentially. Obviously, Danny Amendola is probably not going to come back or anything. So they're down to Quintez Cephas as far as receivers go. So their receiving core is basically non-existent.
Who else do they besides Marvin Jones? Besides them, there were other receivers besides Quintez Cephas. There were other guys that played.
Marvin Hall, who they got rid of.
Yeah, they got rid of him. But also, weren't there still other receivers?
Um,
Because Kenny Golladay didn't play for a few games.
yeah,
And I'm pretty sure Marvin Hall was gone at that point too. So Quintez Cephas was there. Marvin Jones was there. I swear there were like a few other receivers.
I'll try to pull up the roster real quick.
Yeah, and then you got a Pro Bowl tight end. And I don't know if they're gonna keep Jesse James.
Yeah, I don't know. Like there's a lot of holes on this team.
But yeah, they do need receivers. They do.
So that's where a lot of people are curious. Are they going to draft a receiver? They did get Geronimo Allison. I don't think he really played very much. Mohamed Sanu. That's who they got late in the season.
Yeah.
Which he's 31.
Yeah.
Marvin Jones is 30. Kenny Golladay is 27. Danny Amendola is 35. Geronimo Allison's 27. So they're down to Quintez Cephas and Geronimo Allison.
They needed to start re-ing up on like the receiving core soon anyways.
Yeah. That's why I'm really curious to see what your thoughts are on the draft when we get into that stuff, because there's a lot
Once we
of
get
questions.
there, I'm still hoping quarterback first.
Yeah.
But this is a talented receiver class that has some gems.
Yep.
That could be there in the middle rounds.
Mm-hmm.
There are several opportunities to take some talented guys.
Yeah.
It just, will they take the opportunity to do it?
Mm-hmm. I think there's some depth there too. Okay, let's go to some other teams. Like I said, we'll talk more about the Lions when we get closer to draft. We found out today draft date is April 29th, right?
Yeah.
So we'll try to wait on that a little bit. We'll let the tournament stuff pass through, and then we can get back into NFL draft. But there's some big rumors from other teams and some moves that have actually been made.
First big one.
We didn't talk about Carson Wentz.
The guy I used to support, lost faith in,
Well,
and now I think could come back because he has the coach he had when he was good.
Yeah. Oh, and he's better than
They're
Phillip
paired,
Rivers too. So, but they also need wide receiver help.
I think they're good enough. Like they made it to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And still like we're in it with the Bills.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be nice if they had like standout number one guy
Mm-hmm.
since Ty was like on and off.
Yeah. So Carson Wentz got traded to the Colts for, what was it, 2 third-round picks?
I think so.
So man, was it good that Stafford got us some firsts, which in retrospect seems like it was such a good deal to get Stafford out so early in the season or the off season to set the market, and then Carson Wentz only gets 2 third-round picks. That was great for the Lions. And now with some rumors of Desean Watson and we'll get into it, Russell Wilson, maybe on the move, that the Lions got out ahead of that, because if Desean Watson and Russell Wilson wanted to go somewhere and then Matthew Stafford was there, Matt Stafford's like the last guy in the barrel of those two. So really good deal by the Lions, actually, in retrospective. But speaking back to Carson Wentz, he goes to the Colts in a much better situation for him, and even honestly for the Eagles, because they needed Carson Wentz out of there. But this is an upgrade over Phillip Rivers. I still think it's not like the craziest upgrade, because we haven't seen, like, Carson Wentz looked awful last season. So he's got to kind of get that redemption. But
It's gonna take a while.
he has a running game. He has an offensive line already set. Indianapolis's defense is top notch that we saw, especially this year. So if he can, unlock like Michael Pittman Jr. and stuff like that, this team could be really dangerous. And yeah, like you said, he could revitalize his career, which would be interesting.
So he would really have to implode to go into a great situation like this. And some people think he's too far gone because of what he was allowed to do in Philly.
Yep.
But I think, like, the fact that they took Phillip Rivers was really bad in his last year in San Diego or LA.
Yeah.
He was really bad in his last year there. Goes to the Colts, 24 touchdowns, 11 picks. He had like almost 20 interceptions the year before.
Yeah.
And he got it together. That's also because he's been around for so long. Jumping into a situation like that, he instantly was just able to clean things up. But yeah, I think Carson, he has a chance to get his career back on track.
Yeah. And then on the Eagles side, that basically means, until we see the draft, potentially, Jalen Hurts is the guy going forward, which I think is really interesting.
And they still haven't said he is yet.
Right.
Which is, they're just playing games.
Yeah.
The Eagles, man.
Yeah, and they always screw it up in the draft somehow. So, but it's interesting because I'm curious to see how Jalen Hurts does potentially under a full season. Kind of excited about it because I wanted him to play more last season, and he finally did towards the end, and he looked pretty good for the most part. He had some really big games, but he had a couple kind of average games after that. The biggest news of all, though, that we kind of been back and forth tracking is Desean Watson. Definitely wants out of Houston. I don't blame him. His teammate, J.J. Watt, just this past week has moved on already from Houston. He wanted to get out. And a lot of people,
the team nobody expected.
Yeah, it was a kind of a weird decision. There's a lot of memes about it that I've seen about, like, he wants to go play for a winner. He should have gone there. He wants to play with people he knows. He should have gone here. Stuff like that. But J.J. Watt is now a Arizona Cardinal, which was, like you said, there's a big surprise. But it's a decent move. I don't think it's like the best move, obviously, that he could have made. But it's like a speculative move where Arizona has a growing defense that's getting better. We saw Budda Baker was insane this past year. They have another veteran in Chandler Jones, and him and J.J. Watt have wrecked the league the last so many years.
97 sacks and 95 sacks.
Yeah. It's like the biggest combination in football between those two. They drafted Isaiah Simmons last year. Didn't really do a whole lot.
Well, when you have a guy that played almost every position in college, they don't know what to do with him yet.
Right. But I think you get another mentor in that defense. I think that's really good. We obviously saw Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins immediately have a good connection. Their running game needs a little bit of work, but they're still that team that's kind of right on the edge of the playoffs. They can make it in the playoffs. They could potentially make a run because they're good enough if they're playing well, but we haven't seen the consistency out of them yet. So it's an interesting move. What are your thoughts about J.J. Watt going to Arizona?
I honestly wasn't as surprised as most people. I wasn't like keeping track and like seeing like I saw the fans that were going crazy on Twitter like, "Hey, come back to Wisconsin, come to Green Bay," and like a few other teams like near the top of the league saying like, "We could pair you with this top pass rusher. You're our final piece to get us to a championship." But I wasn't like I wasn't invested in the sweepstakes of JJ Watt.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I saw it, I was like, that's a great pickup for the Cardinals. Like, yeah, it helps that defense. Him and Chandler Jones instantly. That like, first of all, it's gonna be hell for Matthew Stafford. They like the Rams have a good O line.
Yeah.
Jared Goff had time back there, but now like these D lines outside of like Seattle, the D lines in that division are so stacked,
Yeah.
including the one he has with Aaron Donald on his
Yeah.
team.
Right.
So yeah, that could be a ridiculously like dominant pass rushing duo on both sides.
And the thing that I think is crazy about the Cardinals is that the way that they set up their pass rush is crazy because they bring a lot of like safety blitzes. Like we saw Buda Baker come out of nowhere a lot of times and stuff like that. Like they throw weird looks at you with their blitzes, and so that's always kind of cool. So that could be really scary for some teams.
On defense, they still need like 3 or 4 more pieces on defense.
Yeah,
for them to be really good.
their
'Cause like you
corners,
said,
their corners still aren't the greatest.
yeah, like Buda Baker is the guy in the secondary.
Yeah.
Who's their other safety? Do they don't have Byron Murphy? Do they have Byron Murphy?
I think they do.
Yeah.
Was he hurt some of those part of the
I
season
think,
this
but
year?
Byron Murphy has talent,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, he's still young. He's still not like elite.
Yeah.
And their linebackers, they just drafted Isaiah Simmons,
Yeah.
and their other linebackers are just okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they still have a few more things to figure out. Hopefully, Isaiah Simmons can take that next step.
Right. Yeah. So we'll go back to the rumor part of it. Desean Watson, and we'll talk about Russell Wilson too. We'll lump them together. These two quarterbacks, Desean Watson specifically said he wants out of Houston. Houston's kind of playing hard to get. They don't really want to trade him. I think they're just trying to mark up the price basically at this point. And then Russell Wilson, it came out that he wanted to be traded. Then he came back and said, no, I don't necessarily want to get traded, but if I did, I would go to these teams.
Yeah.
So it's like a weird, like he's playing cool with it, or I think he's trying not to upset the fans necessarily.
He's being Russell, the guy that he doesn't want to offend anybody. He wants to be the nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he's just being Russ.
From my interpretation, he's basically saying, I don't necessarily want to be traded, but I'd like to be traded. So interesting. There's still a lot of teams that are looking for a quarterback similar to these two guys. One that we brought up before has been San Francisco. They were kind of in the Matthew Stafford talk at one point. What's the other? Oh, the Saints, which I just recently heard that Drew Brees' trainer had said something about Drew Brees potentially coming back.
Drew Brees, he was working out. Who
Yeah.
cares? I'm not paying attention to it.
I hope he's just done.
I'm not paying attention to that.
Just put up the cleats.
His arm can't do it anymore.
But where would you theoretically like to see Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson for that matter? Because I know Russell Wilson's your guy.
When it comes to Deshaun, the first ones I started to hear were Chicago when the trade rumor started, because they're really a quarterback away from possibly winning that division and making a run,
Mm-hmm.
because their defense is that good. They have a good, like a really, really good young stable of receivers that are underrated. Allen Robinson is a like high level number one that hasn't been utilized in the best way. They drafted Darnell Mooney from Tulane. He was one of the best rookie receivers. And they have David Montgomery at running back. So they have so many pieces,
Mm-hmm.
but Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
It's always been holding them back. So if they got him, it would be huge for them. Him playing in the cold would be a new thing.
Yeah.
But he's so good, it wouldn't be a huge problem for him. But San Francisco was the one I think I'd love to see, really.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that would be immediate Super Bowl contender. because
off
they're-
the rip.
Because their defense, they're gonna get Nick Bosa back.
Their whole defense was out
Yeah.
for most of the season.
You get a lot of guys back, and like we saw their receivers when healthy, what they can do.
Yeah, they're still like, they also don't have like a sure bet number one guy, even though Deebo Samuel is like one of the ultimate young weapons in the league.
Mhm.
They
Well,
use
they're-
him in, yeah.
why am I drawing a blank on their rookie wide receiver?
Brandon Ayuk.
Brandon Ayuk. He looked really
He
good.
made some plays when he got the chance.
And if they can keep George Kittle healthy, he's basically their number 1.
Exactly.
So like they're just and you know, their running back committee,
Whoever they draft or sign just works out.
It just works.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they play with it a little too much, I think.
Yeah.
But
Like throwing in Jeff Wilson, it's like, all right.
yeah.
Like he's like the 5th string guy, but
Mhm.
he comes in and he's still getting like 4 yards a pop. So it's like, I guess so. But
Yeah.
yeah, when you can rotate that many guys, that's so lucky to have.
Mhm.
But yeah, they do it a bit too much.
Yeah. So if they can keep their guys healthy, Mostert, Kittle, you know, those defensive guys, like if they can get Desean Watson, that would be crazy. So I don't know. And can you imagine like Desean Watson getting out of the pocket and letting like a guy like Ayuk create or Debo
And
Samuel?
and
like
Debo, yeah,
like that's what those guys are good at.
exactly.
The
The latest rumors have been New York, which are it would be interesting
we
seeing
talking about the Jets or the Giants?
the Jets. The Giants are going to keep
Yeah.
it. Yeah, Daniel Jones had a good finish to the season, so yeah.
They're the Giants. There. All right.
But hey, they almost won the division.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like Sam. What they did to Sam in New York is just a crime.
hmm
They've wasted the first like chunk of his career.
Yeah.
Even though it would be even worse seeing him go to Houston,
Yeah.
it would be new scenery.
Hey, maybe Sam Darnold could turn into Ryan Tannehill.
That's not good.
I mean, it's good for
It's not.
later in his career.
That's not good.
It's good for later
That
in his
means
career.
what he's gonna get paid and then just be terrible.
Yeah, and then he'll be good again.
When did he become good again?
Ryan Tannehill's been good for the Titans.
I'm thinking about.
You're thinking about Josh Rosen.
I'm thinking about. We're talking about the Texans, and
You're talking about,
I'm
like-
thinking about Brock Osweiler
Brock Osweiler.
because we were talking about the Texans, and as soon as you mentioned the next quarterback,
No,
I thought about Brock Osweiler. It would be nice if he could become.
No,
Ryan
I'm talking
Tannehill.
about like a young, talented quarterback that like kind of got put to the side because he wasn't performing all that well, and then revitalizes his career.
But the thing is, he walked into an amazing situation in
Right.
Tennessee,
yeah,
and his potential was like seen immediately.
yeah,
Going into Houston, that would be like Houston is in the worst place they've been since they like stepped into the league in 2003.
Yeah.
They're back to like
Well,
the beginning.
and to think for Sam Darnold to potentially play with the Jets and think that was, you know, as bad as it could be, and then being like, oh no, we're shipping you off to Houston.
Yeah, it would be like Josh Rosen didn't get a shot. When he got a shot, he really didn't because the things around him were awful.
Yeah.
Sam has gotten his shot and has shown signs. It'd be torture sending him to an even worse situation.
Yeah.
But seeing Deshaun in New York would kind of be interesting
No, because Chris
under a
would-
new regime.
could you imagine Chris talking to us
Oh
every
my
weekend about
God.
Deshaun Watson being on the Jets?
Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It would be
We can't have that.
He would lose his mind.
We can't have that. I think San Francisco. I think that's the key. What do you think about Russell Wilson?
He listed.
Could you even imagine him leaving Seattle?
I could honestly because
I mean, this
I
day and
don't-
age, yeah, but
I don't know if I don't think at this point will Seattle meet his demands. Like he wants so much control
Mhm.
in terms of the offense and like having say in like the guys they possibly draft and sign. Like he wants a certain amount of control,
yeah,
and it kind of works in Seattle because they haven't made great decisions
right.
in terms of personnel. But I mean, if another team would want to give him that much control, it's possible
Yeah,
because he's that great, and the teams he wants to go to are like win now situations.
Mhm.
So I can see them trading him
yeah,
because I don't think Seattle is in a great place to make a Super Bowl run right now.
yeah. And I think it's hard to give him the reins because, you know, everybody had been talking for a while because like Seattle was just like a ground and pound type of team with Russell just being that accurate, super clutch quarterback. But then everybody was like, well, why don't we just let Russ cook? That was the whole meme thing going on. Let Russ cook. And they did this season. And
There
man,
were ups and downs.
he came out
he came out on
firing and he looked insane.
He was
like,
the MVP of the first
he
half
was
of the season.
runaway MVP. Looked
Yeah.
incredible. And they're like, wow.
But we all quickly found out you you can't put it all on one person
Yeah.
and expect everything to just work out to be fine.
Yeah, because and then all of a sudden he started throwing a lot of picks. All of a sudden it was almost like he started thinking that he could do no wrong, which is basically not
Yeah.
Russell Wilson.
Letting Russ cook is a great idea, but you can't just give him 100% of the offense.
Yeah, you don't want to
And
burn it.
Yeah, exactly. I like that.
You don't want to burn
Let
it.
Russ cook, don't let Russ burn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So it's interesting, and I'm curious to see what Russell is gonna do. Because I mean, as much as I don't like guys moving teams and stuff, I like seeing certain teams have a specific guy for a while, kind of be the face of that franchise. It is also a little exciting to see guys move around because it's not like the NBA where they're constantly moving around. In the NFL, it's usually like, 2 teams, maybe 3, if you're like a Brett Favre or something. But most of the time, it's like a couple teams here and there for the big name guys. So I wouldn't mind seeing Russ go somewhere, especially if he. I've heard some stuff about him going to the Saints, which would be
That was one of the listed teams.
yeah, that would be the real interesting one.
But the latest one everybody seems to be jumping on is he listed Dallas.
Yeah,
And people really want to see them flip Dak and
America's
Russ.
team.
Hey,
Yeah,
get Russ into. I wouldn't hate Dallas as much anymore because Russ is my favorite quarterback to
Yeah.
watch.
and he's got plenty of weapons over there if he goes.
Even though that whole situation is still a mess, the defense, the
Mhm.
coaching, it's all just weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, flipping Dak to Seattle, him having those receivers, they'd probably still be afloat in Seattle. They'd
Mhm.
probably be like a 7-8 win team.
Yeah.
Because the rest of that division is so like high powered right now.
Right.
But I wouldn't mind seeing that flip, seeing Dak in Seattle, Russ in Dallas.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it either. I still wouldn't like Dallas. I don't have as much.
Oh
of-
yeah, I wouldn't like him.
I don't have as much love for Russ as you do, obviously. But I don't mind him or anything. I think it'd be cool.
Who is your favorite quarterback right now? Do you have a favorite
I
quarterback?
don't know if I really do. Like Jalen Hurts is kind of like my favorite quarterback right now, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I'm kind of on the Justin Herbert hype train.
Oh boy.
I always
Now,
like
he's
I
your
like
guy
the, I like
now.
the Oregon guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean Tyrod Taylor is another one of my guys. So like
You're the obscure.
I'm not the guy to just go in and
That's
be like
fine.
Tom Brady or
But I haven't like Russ has been the only dude that I've loved watching over the past few years.
yeah.
Because he's like the closest thing to like an artist playing the quarterback position. He makes plays that shouldn't be made.
Mhm.
Like that play last year when he rolled out to the left and put it in like this small spot in the corner of the end zone
Yeah.
where only his guy could get it. Like most quarterbacks in the league can't do that. Like him, Aaron Rodgers, it's only a few guys that can make those types of plays because their throwing talent is just that good.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, we are pretty much over. We ran through a lot of NFL talk and stuff. So we'll have to talk about NBA next week, which is fine because, like I said, they got their All-Star game this weekend, so we can talk about that. And
That's the All-Star game is
It's this weekend, the 7th.
I can't like that's
So we don't even have to preview the dunk contest. We'll just talk about it after the fact.
the 3-point contest is more like
Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of how it's been the last few years.
exactly like
But-
that one is stacked.
Yeah. But
Yeah, the dunk contest is just a halftime novelty show
Yeah.
this year, so it's nothing to really like it.
yeah. And there's not any NBA games to talk about next week, so we can go over the whole like mid-season stuff and talk about the movers and things like that and how we think the All-Star game went in this weird COVID year because the skills challenge and the 3-point contest are before the game starts, and then like you said, the dunk contest is at halftime. But we'll have to talk about it next week. This has been Views from the Sidelines. My partner Malik Hill. I'm Joey Tysick. We'll see you guys next time.
Short, like 10-second NBA talk. Phoenix is in second place in the West. CP improving another team. Devin Booker playing out his mind. Let's go Phoenix.
Agreed.